TV, you want ice, you want blackness, go on Black Ice TV. See?
What came first? Ra or Allah? Jesus, Darwin, Krishna, Raja. Everybody swears they know the creator. Put belief first, facts, cracks grow greater. Check it, pa, what came first? Drake or the Woo? If mask off's the future is blue. Higher infinite power healing our people. Replaced with trap, confine the minds of ways that's fecal, lethal. What came first? Woman or the man? You take man out of woman, you can't reverse the plan. Man feels the greater than nature, that's why we're living damn. Balance brings truth, but resides in a hand. Talk fam, what came first? Blackness or the womb? The blackness of the galaxy, the blackness of the tomb, the blackness of the skin or the blackness of the heart, the blackness of the soul where the seed takes its start.
Thank you, yes.
Okay.
Grab me that phone.
Sister Shazam. You know, we know that you've done a bit of history yourself. Is it with Robin Walker?
Yeah, I did the whole year.
Okay. And you know, like, what we always say is that, like, we have to stand on top of our history, not looking it from the now looking backwards, so we're dwelling in the back. But the history that you've learned from Mr. Robin Walker, and the information that he has given, how has that helped you in life today?
Well, at the time I did the course with Robin Walker, I was still quite fresh out of church. Mm-hmm. So it was not long after asking God for the truth. And what I liked about Robin Walker's course was it didn't just teach you about slavery. It taught us about our rich history before slavery. So, of course, you know, we all know about slavery, but not many of us know of our... And his book is called When We Ruled. So he's more focusing on our our greatness before we were enslaved. And so, obviously, it's good to know, when you're looking back at your history, it's good to know, you need to know about what happened to our ancestors in slavery, but you don't stop there. You've got to keep looking back, further and further back, and go back as far as you can. So a lot of the information I was channeling, I didn't even know where it was coming from, but it was coming from ancient Kemet. And so we have roots, and that's where you want to get back to. Don't just let them make you think that you are just slaves. So we are of royal heritage. And that is the truth. It's in our bloodline. So we have to remember who we are and reclaim our thrones, and which is our rightful position in society. So Robin Walker's course just helped me develop that sense of pride in who I am as a black woman and pride in my race.
Okay, so what touched you in that when you was getting taught in that history? Something must have gravitated out of that, like a content. Like, let's say, for instance, mentioning Marcus Garvey, and you just got some information, you said, wow, I didn't know that. Did you get any of that kind of feeling when you was getting that information from Robin Walker?
Well, it was mainly that thing of our greatness, because I didn't know.
That you gravitated to? Because we all tend to gravitate to somebody. There must be someone in that book that must have said, you know what, this is a fact. There might have been one. There'd be a goddess. It could have been a princess. It could have been Marcus Garvey. But there's always one that changes us to look at the view much more clearer.
I can't.
That you always resonate to. You always mention her name. Think of a goddess.
Oshun. Yes, but I didn't necessarily learn that on his course.
No, but it's part of history.
Yeah.
So
I thought you were talking about in relation to his course. That's why, yeah, Het Heru, because it was more recently she came as Oshun.
Yeah.
And then one day I was sitting thinking, I wonder if Het Heru and Oshun is the same person. And I just Googled it. is Oshun and Het Heru the same? And sure enough, they were, because I'd more always related to it as Het Heru.
Because they changed what it is that what we've got to understand is majority. No, it can pick me up. But majority of the time, you will find that everything in history, where the things change, is more on the what we call language or linguistics. Majority of the source or the foundation is always, we find, is relatively the same. So when we see one deities, you can look around and you'll find the deity somewhere else. But the only thing is the different languages. So when it comes to Christianity and you look at Christianity, you can look much more further and you find where it actually comes from. So, and that's why I was asking you what kind of you saw in forms of history and said, you know what, this is a fact and this is what's changed me and this is what's taken me away from the church because now I have a better understanding. There must have been one thing that must have kind of changed you. Do you think there was?
I wouldn't necessarily say one thing, but I do remember when I first asked God for the truth and I began to learn about the creative power of our thoughts, and it was so profound to me at the time, and I was thinking, why hasn't anybody ever told me this before? You know, how your thoughts are creating your future. So, yeah, that was a big thing for me. And now when looking in the Bible, seeing references to it, so it's almost like it's there, but it's kind of cloaked. It's not revealed, open, obvious, you know. So they might say things like, for instance, there's a scripture that says, whatever things are pure, whatever things are holy, whatever things are good, you know, think on these things. So that in a way is relating to meditation, you know. Yeah. But they don't say to you that your thoughts are creative. Why not just say that, you know? That your thoughts are creating your future, you know. Yeah.
All right. Now, we're going to go into a little bit more deeper and in depth in this one, because this is to do with health and well-being. And we're going to talk about things that have given us trauma, things that have made us sick, as we know many people are sick. Bring forms of confusion, bring toxics to our lives, what kind of foods we need to eat, what foods that we're eating that are bad for us, and just generalizing on our health and well-being for us to able to grow.
All right. Excellent question, brother. We first must ask ourselves, what is health? Everyone always thinks it's the physical body, you know, but we are made of three parts: the mind, the body, and the spirit. But since we live in a Eurocentric society, it's all only about the physical. So we just focus on the health. As we know, or a lot of us should know by now, especially in the conscious community, a vegan and even a raw foods diet is better for you. We want an alkaline bodies, an alkaline food that produces higher vibration. We want our foods that are live. We want our foods that we give good substance from. But what we don't realize is that a lot of these, we'll call them health nuts, okay? Because we can, you know how we do. Once black people do something, we're gonna do the most and take it to the extreme, you know. So a lot of these, you know, the alkaline water, and I'm not touching this food unless it was made in the Himalayas on Christmas under the Christmas moon on a Sunday. We get really deep with it. And what we don't realize is our spirit and the power within us. As we all have a solar plexus, right? There's a sun above and there's a sun inside. And that's why that area or chakra region is the solar plexus. So you want to be alkaline. And that's why a lot of alkaline water, you can't expose it to the sun. Because if you expose it to the sun, it loses its pH and becomes acidic. Well, guess what happens when you drink or eat anything? It's exposed to your inner sun. And your inner sun, whatever consciousness you are, higher or lower, is the esophagus goes past that into the stomach. So it has to pass through that. So you infuse into the food and the drink that you take your consciousness, whether it's higher, which is alkaline, your thoughts, your behavior, or lower, which is acidic, the ego and so on. So it's not necessarily what you put in, but what your spirit is giving out And that's the focus on health issues in the black community that we don't have. Because there's a lot of, if that was the case, all the raw foods people, all the meditative people, all this really holistic, extreme people would be at a high vibration, but they be the most egotistical people I know at times. So I really wish that we focus like Dr. Laila Africa. It's African holistic. It's 360 degrees. It's the body. It's the mind. It's the spirit. It's the mental. It's the emotional. It's all in one. And we need to look at health in those terms and not just what we consume or what we expose ourselves to.
Okay, TC. But now we're going to go to Shazam, and we're going to talk about trauma and what are people going through, and the women, how it's affecting them in many ways, even through the womb.
Yeah, it's a big topic, actually. When I published the first edition of my book, I had so many people, women and men, coming to me with their stories of how they had been sexually abused, you know, or maybe they might have had FGM, female genital mutilation, been raped. Even men. I have a man that I know who was raped as a child, and he now does the Man in the Mirror project to raise awareness of this within our community, because it's so prevalent, but yet it's all kind of swept under the carpet.
And this is where Black Eyes TV opens up.
That's right.
We need
Yeah.
to talk about these things much more regularly.
Yeah. So I've created an event which is actually tonight around sexual trauma and how we can heal, really, because this is where our power lies. And I really do believe that this is why there has been such an attack on the women, the men, the children, in terms of their sexual energy. Because if that energy is blocked, we're not going to be able to perform these rituals, you know. And if we're not able to perform these rituals, then we're not able to elevate ourselves and reclaim our position in society. So it is a big topic, and it is time for it to be brought out into the open so that we can discuss it, so that we can heal ourselves and move forward.
Have you had anyone that's kind of broken their experiences of being in that trauma? Like, you know that the trauma is sometimes a cause, but the effect of it.
Yeah.
How have you felt when that person kind of relates that to you?
Okay, I have a particular woman. She's very close to me, and she was sexually abused as a child, and she's now working as a... In fact, I know a number of women who this has happened to, where they've ended up, you know, in a situation where they're abusing. Okay. So yes, when I published the first edition of the book, I had a number of men and women coming to me with their sexual issues. A lot of them had been abused sexually as children. Some of them had been raped. Some of them had had female genital mutilation. Even just very recently, a woman came to me. She just finished reading the book, and she said she was 52 and she had only ever experienced an orgasm twice in her whole life, which to me is very tragic. And so I'd realised that there was a big problem, really, in terms of our sexual energy and us not knowing how to relate to it properly. The main reason I see is the thing with religion, and how religion separates sexuality from spirituality. So if you're sexual, you can't be spiritual. And if you're spiritual, you can't possibly be sexual at the same time. Whereas my job is to put the two back together again. Because as people of colour, we are naturally sexual and naturally spiritual. So with the ritual that I wrote about, I channeled, it's about harnessing that sexual energy and raising it up and using it to create something, because the The woman, her womb is actually a portal. So it's not just babies are spirits coming from the non-physical realm through the woman into this physical realm. And so her womb is a portal to bring in other things other than babies into this physical realm. And so these rituals, that's how we manifest. And even the word manifest, it's the man's vision that is going to manifest. I think that's why it's manifest. So this is the information that we, well, at least myself personally, and through TC's book, and Kevin's book is about raising that level of consciousness to become that king and the queen. That's what it's about, is helping us to regain our power. So for a lot of women, they're abusing their bodies. They're having, I don't even call it sex actually. It's just abuse of their body. And they're pretending that they're enjoying it. You know, because every now and again I go and watch porn just to see what's going on out there. Seriously, I do. I just watch it to see. Research. Seriously, I'm on my heart. I do. I have to go and watch it.
When a man says that, it's a bit different.
I do. And I just think to myself, these women, they can't be serious that they're actually enjoying what's happening to them, but they pretend that they're enjoying it. You know.
Well, because I've got a question to ask. Yeah. Just speak loud so you can pick me up. Yeah. In today's society, where it's a sexual saturation across the board, everything's sex sells. When you're talking about relationships and sex in this climate, how do you raise the spiritual awareness within it?
Exactly.
And separate it from the base titillation that is everywhere. Like, how is that? How do you attack and deal with
This
that
is it.
when you're dealing with talking about sex? Because obviously you just mentioned porn. We all laughed. You know, it's got that form of ha he behind the closed doors kind of thing. So when you're trying to talk about sex and relationships and the sacredness of it, do you have a problem trying to get people to take it seriously, because we're living in a society of saturation across the board, and as I said, sex is everywhere.
Because it's in forms of kind of like entertainment.
Sex everywhere.
So where we feel like when we talk about it, is we either laugh about it or we keep our mouth shut and don't talk about it
It's
at
a
all.
taboo.
Yeah.
It's a taboo.
Yeah.
So, you know, how do you strike that balance when talking about it or dealing with it? Do you find it hard? Is it a problem?
No, I mean, my book is very candid in that way. I mean, their sex life goes through a transformation. So at the beginning, it's very raw. It's, somebody said it's like voyeurism. They felt like they were really just watching through the window. But by the time they get to it elevates, and they get to that part where they're beginning to practice sacred sex, and they go behind closed doors. You can't even, I don't even talk about it because it's that sacred. So that's what I'm hoping for people to get from reading the book, is that there's a level that you can get to, which many of us have not experienced before. They're just operating on those lower four chakras, but they don't understand that you can get to another level in your sexuality, you know, and this is what we're aiming to help people to understand. Yeah.
So that's basically what my book is about. It says The Secret Science of Black Male and Female Sex. And I know a lot of people buy the book because of that word sex, because of the reasons that we're talking about today. When I had my experience, the goddess Nekhebit told me sex is a universal law, a universal principle that holds the universe in a delicate balance and harmony. So everything, all systems practice sex. What is sex? Sex is really the law of gender. The law of gender states that everything is energy. All energy is either masculine or feminine. Masculine energy, on a simple basis, just gives out energy. It was built to give out energy. And feminine energy just means to receive energy. Okay? So this is where you get economics, the buying and selling of goods. That's a practice of sex. Buying is receiving, selling is giving. The circulatory system of the blood, all it does is circulate through the heart and lungs. It gets oxygen, receives oxygen, and then it goes out and gives the body the oxygen. Everything is sex. So we have complicated sex and demonized sex when it's actually the law, the one thing that holds everything together. The expression of the law of gender now can be at a higher state or can be at a lower state depending on your level of consciousness. But the act of sex or the law of gender should not be taboo. It should be open, and we should be teaching this as early as they can ask questions, because it's what holds it together. And once we know from a higher scientific principle of what sex really is, then we don't get the behind closed doors, can't talk about it. Even the deals of gender now, right? That's a big deal now. Oh, gender doesn't matter. Oh, I beg your pardon. Gender holds this whole world together. So
let me ask a quick question though. Is what would you say the age group would you start to teach the children from? Because, you know, the one thing is that we put our kids into the schools. The school system teaches them the basics, but don't give them the explanations behind it. And when the child comes home, what age would you start to show them something like that without making them too sexualized in doing things outside the box?
Right. Great question. I actually start in the womb. In the womb. Remember, when they're in the womb, they're in a liquid or water form environment. And I don't know if you've ever been underwater and someone drops in a pool and someone drops a dime or a quarter. It's like echoes underwater through the whole pool. So everything underwater is heightened like to the 6th power. So that means this child in our wombs, our sisters' wombs, is receiving all this information from us without even being here. It's like being in that pool and everything is heightened state. So I say in the womb because we need to even start thinking about consciousness and these laws before they come out. But to be directly to your age group, I think as early as possible, because it's life. It's the whole thing in life. It's what does it mean to be male? Male just doesn't mean dad goes to work, dad pays the bills or whatever. I know it's all switched.
I find that our parents, because it's such a taboo, right? We go out into that wilderness, and because we don't know nothing, we end up gambling or by having sex with someone that we don't know nothing about.
True.
That's why I sometimes wonder that when the children do go out there, how do we give them that form of education or understanding? Because we can all talk about it in the books and literally, but the problem is that we're not teaching them the methods or what to do or how to do or to make sure that they are secure in whatever they're doing.
Correct. Yeah. Hold on, brother. So in ancient Kemet again, there was no stipulation between the word God or the concept of God and the concept of nature. Nature was God and God was nature. So to be closer to God, you better learn the universal principles that run the universe. You had to go closer to nature. So a lot of our teachings was in nature. And nature practices sex all the time. And once you can acknowledge that, and daddy, this is a male principle, or this is the feminine principle, and this is what it means. And when they come together, they create this. Now that you get all that lower vibration of what sex is and what it means out the door, because the European, right? When he met us, we was butt naked. We didn't have no problems with. Now you got problems with breastfeeding in public, which is a natural thing. Right? So it's their stipulation. We need to get out of their mindset of their modalities of culture and what's appropriate and go back to our right minds and what's appropriate.
On top of that, Mr. King Kevin, give us something. Oh, and I would like you to even explain in that you was talking about earlier on in the library a couple of days ago about, the health of how our children in the schools and what's forcing them to go into the prison system. But I just want you to touch on what we've just spoken just now and then we go into that form of prison system and what you've seen around your environment, because most of the people that you was explaining that have been in prison for 100 years or 60 years, 20 years and things like that, because this sickness is coming to be a habit. So we come out there and we commit crimes because we feel that we need to make money to get us into that system.
Yeah, great question, Mr. Riggs. Back to the original question regarding sexual abuse. I've had two women in my life that has opened themselves up to me regarding what they've experienced in their life. One young lady, when I was in high school, you know, her uncle was molesting her for several years. It wasn't until her cousin seen something that the cousin stepped up and actually, you know, spoke up about the situation, and that's when they dealt with it. But this the thing. The father, her father, was a very wealthy man in the community. And so he didn't want his name tarnished. So what he did was he just kind of kicked the uncle out the family, so to speak, and they didn't press any charges, didn't do anything, and kind of swept it under the rug. And so this, you know, bothered her for several years. She ended up being very successful in her life, you know, very successful. I mean, making like 6 figures. But then there's another young lady that I met years later. She ended up, you know, getting on drugs and having several children with, you know, men who really not in the father, you know, in the children's lives, not being the father. And so it's important that if you are dealing with that type of trauma, that type of experience, that you seek help from people who love you and that can guide you so that you can use your energy towards a positive direction. I mentioned these two people. Actually, they're in my first book, Courage to Believe, which is a, you know, inspirational autobiography about my life. I mentioned these two women because they went 2 different directions. Both kind of experienced the same things, but went 2 different directions. And they also, and which is I don't remember what the stats are, but when a woman has been abused at a young age, she's also more than likely to be raped later on in their lives. These sexual predators can sense that. You know, they somehow they can sense the vulnerability. Right.
Always explain with the female and male dog that sometimes when females are on their time of what we call heat, they let out a frequency. And the male dog now is able to sniff,
right,
and then able to spray around the female dog his territory, so that no other male can come in, but they prey on that female because they can sense.
They can sense.
That time.
Just she's vulnerable. Yeah. Right, and you know it's a sad thing, and it's very popular in the black community. You know, it's accepted behavior to grab a woman's butt. You know what I mean? To call her, you know, can I curse on the show as well?
Yeah, it can be whatever you like.
You know, it's straight up. You know, it's acceptable behavior to call your woman a bitch. You know what I'm saying? Or to have multiple women. You know, to have several baby mamas. You know, it's actually through music and the media, it's encouraged. You know what I'm saying? So we as conscious individuals, it's our responsibility to put that information out there, to know this is not acceptable. You know, we are not going to condone this. You know, so instead of supporting these artists that's creating this type of music or movies that are, you know, projecting this type of image, we need to fight against it by putting out positive music and movies as well. Now, the second part of your question, which ties into what we're saying regarding the school to prison pipeline, a lot of these young men and adults that go to prison, they bring that spirit back into the community. And in prison, a lot of guys are getting raped. A lot of guys are, you know, are turning gay. And they come back into the community and inject that demonic spirit right back into the community. And a lot of our women are seeing these guys and actually allowing them to move into their homes, and now they're molesting or raping their sons and daughters. And so this cycle continues, because now these young kids are going to grow up, and more than likely, if they don't seek treatment or talk about it, seek help, they're going to repeat the same thing again. So it's very important that we stop it. Yes, I call it in my book, 7 Queens, STD, Sexually Transmitted Demons. You know what I mean? So these type of things need to be, there need to be some sort of exorcism to get rid of that spirit and to allow them to actually see themselves as beautiful. Because once that happens to you, from my understanding, you don't see yourself as beautiful. You don't see yourself as important. You see yourself as, less than the next woman or man. And so you end up selling drugs. You end up becoming a pimp. You end up becoming a stripper. And most of these strippers have been sexually abused, the truth be told. But yeah, that's my piece on it.
Mr. Rich, on reflection time, so far, what have you your thoughts?
So far, it's been very insightful. I mean, my input, as far as the sexual abuse, again, I don't think a lot of people realize how much of a problem that is. How many people have been abused? How many people have got a mental disposition in place long before they've even got to an age to even experience what an adult relationship is. So by the time they get there, again, as you said, there's a muddied water, an equation that started off with the wrong number from the start. So once you start like that, you're never going to get the right figure at the end if it's not tackled at some point. So, I'm that's one of the things when I reflect, and from my own personal experiences now, especially in the last 5 to 10 years, I've, again, like many of you have said, I've met countless people now who have been abused, and the stories just blow my mind, and even the way people have learned to live with it, because not everybody's wonky, not everybody's, feeling it. Some people have learned to deal with it, go on to be successful, go on to be constructive people. But again, the levels in which black people today, male and female, are experiencing this level of abuse needs to be acknowledged for us to be able to move forward. So that's definitely one thing, I would definitely like to highlight and stress to people when you're meeting females and males. Be mindful of this. You don't know what people have experienced or gone through, before you get to that dating process. So, always check people's history, unify their past, the chemistry, the history, the sociology, the psychology, this grand unified theorem, Dr. Oyibo. To see, you have to bring all of those factors together when you're analysing people to get a rounded picture. So, I thank Kevin and TC again for their books, because I know they cover those bases, and I need to look at your book, Suzanne, because I haven't actually looked at it yet. So I will be checking it out and having a look. But yeah, so far, been blessed.
Yeah, we're going to add something more. Suzanne?
I also wanted to talk about men on the down low in our community, because it's quite prevalent as well. And so a lot of women are in relationships with men not knowing that they're sleeping with other men. And that is another thing that's not talked about in our community. And I don't know if we're going to get to tackle that one tonight, but I personally experienced it, and I personally know a man who was in that situation himself, in a relationship with a woman, but he was on the down low. And it is very prevalent within our community.
Just to be clear, when you say down low, we're talking about homosexuality down low.
Yeah.
Undercover.
Yeah. Whilst in a relationship with a woman.
The Michael Barrymore kind of thing.
Well, let me ask you lot all now, what is your opinion on homosexuality? What is the general opinion of the panel?
Black ice T V. Black ice T V.
What came first, Ra or Allah? Jesus, Darwin, Krishna, Raja. Everybody swears they know the creator. Put belief first, facts, cracks grow greater. Check it, pa, what came first, Drake or the Woo? If mask off's the future is blue. Higher infinite power healing our people. Replaced with trap, confine the minds of ways that's fecal, lethal. What came first, woman or the man? You take man out of woman, you can't reverse the plan. Man feels the greater than nature, that's why we're living damn. Balance brings truth, but resides in a hand. Talk fam, what came first? Blackness or the womb? The blackness of the galaxy, the blackness of the tomb. The blackness of the skin or the blackness of the heart? The blackness of the soul where the seed takes its start.